All right, take two. Now that we've got our terrain tools installed in our project here, I'm going to switch back to the scene view. And it can be really helpful, honestly, really helpful to arrange these windows so that, that one, we're going to need to see into that window a little bit. But arrange your windows so that you give yourself some good real estate to work here, because we're going to really need to be able to see into our scene view. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my ground, which I made a long time ago and even applied a material to it, and I'm just going to delete it. Goodbye, ground. Ground is gone. Now, I'm going to click on here, window, and down at the very bottom of window is terrain, and then off terrain, there's the terrain toolbox. Open the terrain toolbox up. We're going to go ahead and drag this, and we're going to dock it over here on our inspector tab here. So it's on the same tab with inspector and lighting. Dock your terrain toolbox over there. Now, with my terrain toolbox over here, I'm just going to go with the default settings they give us right here. And I'm just going to click the create button. And that creates a ginormous terrain here. And this thing is huge. It's quite big. You could still see your prototype down here, at 000. And also notice something about these terrains. They don't orient the terrain from the center. The terrain's oriented from its left, I guess, for lack of a better description, bottom left corner. Lines up at 000. This thing is very paintable, and we can do a lot with this. And so when we clicked that create button, it created a terrain group. And if I open that up, I'll find inside there the actual terrain. And if I switch over to the inspector panel, okay, the terrain group's got a transform and it's got a script. If I wanted to change the position of the transform, I could set its X to -500, and I could set its Z, I believe, to -500. And then I believe my prototype is going to be right smack dab in the middle now. There we go. So by setting the terrain group's position to -500 in X and -500 in Z, that kind of centers it in my world with my plane still right there at 000. And now I'm going to get ready to start to create my terrain. So selecting the terrain in the hierarchy here, the actual terrain, you'll see it's the part, it's got a transform also, which we could change its position. And it's also got this terrain element. And this terrain element has 5 basic tools involved in it. And the first one that we're going to be looking at for today is this paint terrain button. So I'll click the paint terrain button and it opens up a menu. And this menu here, you'll notice it really changed a whole lot. And there's a little drop down right here. And I want to switch it. I'm not sure what yours will come out to by default, but I'm going to set it to raise or lower terrain. And that's off of the drop down menu right here. So off the drop down menu, I'll set it to raise or lower terrain. And then usually the brush strength is usually a rather large number. I recommend setting the brush strength to 0.01. It may seem really small, and you can adjust the brush size a little bit, make that a little bigger since I've made the terrain so huge. And then there's a lot of different brush styles that we can use. Each of these will create a bit of a different effect. But now if I mouse over, I'll select one of these brushes. I've got my strength set to 0.01. If I mouse over this spot, click my mouse down and move my mouse, I'll begin to see that I am pulling up a mountain right there. I've got a mountain pulling up right there. Maybe I could set my strength to 0.1. And you can see that with a strength of 0.1, I'm now pulling up even more. So I click and I drag my mouse. And basically, you're going to learn how to do this by doing it. You're going to have to get in there and click and drag. And just clicking itself does something. Clicking and dragging does something. Dragging up does something. Now, let's say you didn't like something that you did. You brought something up you didn't want to bring up. You want to make it go back down. If you press your control button and you click, pressing the control button makes what you brought up move down. So you can push the terrain back down by holding down the control button. Following this, you can create mountains. You can adjust your brush strength. If I gave myself a brush strength of 1, look at that over there. Oh my gosh, a very big mountain. Spires. So as you can see, you don't need a very large brush strength in order to really affect how things are looking. You can change to which brush you're using. The different brushes create different styles of mountains. And you're going to want to create a series of mountain ranges, valleys. I strongly want to recommend that you keep everything away from the very edge of the terrain. Don't be lifting up the very edge. If you lift up the very edge of the terrain, you're not going to be able to tile these. Like if you wanted to have more than one terrain. As long as the edges are flat, you'll be able to tile the terrain so they can fit next to one another. If you raise and lift up the edges, you're going to have a raised edge. It's not going to look good. It's not going to look clean. So build yourself a series of mountains. Create a scene here. Try different brushes to see what kind of effect do you get from different brushes. And check out, like if you click in between mountain peaks, mess around with it, play with it. I'm looking forward to seeing, some of what you guys create for me, because what you're creating here is you're creating the scene that you are going to fly around in. Now, showed you the basics of using the terrain tool, raising and lowering. To raise, you would, select a brush, set a brush strength, left click, and start to create a terrain. If you want to push something back down because you didn't like what you did, you press the control button. And notice I'm wiping out mountains. I just wiped out a bunch of mountains, didn't I? By holding down my control key. That's the long and short of creating mountain ranges. All right. I'll call that one a wrap.